Сайн байцгаана уу хүн үзэгчтэй. Өнөөдөр орой манай дефакто нэвтрүүлгийн зочноор Азийн Хөгжлийн Банкны Зүүн Азийн бүс нутгийн газрын ерөнхий захирал ноён Аюуми Кониши оролцож байна. Good evening, sir.
Good evening.
Welcome to Mongolia.
Thank you.
So you are responsible in ADB for East Asia, but first of all, Mongolia and People's Republic of China. How do you find your job? What are exactly your office kind of main focus is nowadays?
Okay. Two things I can say.
Okay.
First of all, I certainly find my job interesting.
Yep.
It gave me an opportunity actually to come to Mongolia back in 1992.
Oh.
So in a way, okay, on and off, I haven't really been working on Mongolia all the time,
Yeah.
but I could really follow the development of the country over 20 years. So how things have changed, and just observing that, that's interesting. And of course, the ADB helped to, let's say, rehabilitate your airport terminal, or let's say the power plant, CHP3 rehabilitation, ADB, helped rehabilitate, or even that, the mobile phone you're using here, ADB had a project for the telecommunication, and how quickly this country has been changing for last over 20 years, and I was able to really witness that.
Okay.
So that was interesting part of the job.
Okay.
Of course, the challenge, okay, now you also mentioned that China is part of my portfolio now, and how to deal with China. Or, China is a country which is often misunderstood by people outside, but they have their own development challenges, and how we work with them, and then make sure that people outside understand our intention. That's also a bit of a challenge. So I should say, yeah, thank you very much. I certainly have an interesting job, but also that's a challenging job.
You exactly is kind of mentioned the period from 92 up to today, this whole hour, we call it democratic changes, which includes economic and political transactions of the transitions of this country.
Right.
And as you mentioned, you were playing. Mongolia is very thankful to ADB because you were at the time when it was even more difficult. Again, the power stations, airport, all these big projects. Today, after 23, I remember already 23 or so years
Right, yes.
of ADB. ADB is, first of all, let's talk a bit about ADB to our audience.
Okay.
And please tell us about who owns the ADB, what is the main purpose of ADB from your perspective?
ADB is owned by now 67 countries. I believe 25 of them outside of the region, and then 40 some countries are within the from within the region. So ADB is a bank, but that's a bank established by the member countries to help the development of Asia. So our main job certainly is to provide funding, but actually help formulate the projects. That's part of our job, or provide technical assistance, really to help the countries think through some of the key development issues. That's also our job. Now I don't know what else you need to know.
What is the overall, just I want to give a full picture. What is the total portfolio, and which part is there any division you classify the portfolio?
Okay, right now ADB lends about 20 billion, or let's say the ADB's own resources, we are lending about $12 billion a year in total for all to our member countries.
Okay.
Then so we have a capital of over $100 billion. Now the kind of portfolio we have, the we basically support our member countries and development, particularly the infrastructure development. In Mongolia, we helped, the airport or the power stations. That's, those are the old projects. But then now, I understand you visited our, project in the western corridor, because, or let's say Ulaanbaatar to Zaminut, that highway, those are the kind of projects we have been helping. But at the same time, we also think, social aspects are very important for the country's development. So in Mongolia, for example, the health sector development, we've been doing the series of projects. We also have been helping the education sector development. So, and you can find our projects in so many different areas.
I think your projects become a part and parcel of our life, social life, schools, healthcare, name it, in every field, and we see quite devoted actions from your side. And I understand Mongolia keeps paying well back. There are two things: grants, that is, we not need to pay back, and also loans, long term.
Right.
Cheap, relatively, 40 years grassroots, right? That grace period.
That's the grace period for that. Actually, we have grants. That's one. And then we have something so-called highly concessional loan resources, Asian Development Fund, under which actually we also provided grants, but then there's been a highly concessional loans, which you just mentioned, that 80 years of grace, then 32 years of repayment. In old days, actually, we had 10 years grace with 40 years of repayment period. That was the normal thing. And then we also have the ordinary capital resources loans, which basically the money we raise from the international capital market. So that's in a way the commercial rate. But then because of the ADB's AAA rating, the ADB's credit rating in the financial sector is very strong. Because of that, ADB can raise money, really cheapest. Than anybody else. Cheaper than anybody else.
Because of the rating.
Yeah. And then we basically pass on that cheap loan to our member countries.
What's total portfolio in Mongolia today?
In Mongolia right now, I think, we are now looking at the total portfolio of about $1 billion. But that's also changing rather quickly. Rather quickly. What happened was 2 years ago, there was a request from the government that before that we were lending just about this $25 million of ADF resources, those highly concessional loans, plus about, let's say, $50 million of ordinary capital resources at market-based loan. So, less than 100 million a year was the sort of lending envelope we had. But because of the need of Mongolia to invest more in the infrastructure, government said, that is just too small. So they wanted us to increase our country allocation. 2 years ago, we came up with a strategy which allows us to lend $200 million a year of OCR resources on top of $25 million or so of ADF resources. So now we are looking at annual lending volume of about $250 million or so a year.
It's a quite substantial amount for the size of economy we have.
Yes.
And probably it is quite substantial part of total loan to the economy, if you count our private banks, commercial banks. See, this whole money goes to public sector. Do you have private sector
We
loans?
also have private sector loans. We are helping Hanbank and or in earlier days, we help the Trade and Development Bank. So the many financial sector.
In which way you help banks?
We provided two-step loans. That's one. We provided trade finance to the banks. And we actually also helped the banking sector as a whole, to have a better regulatory framework. So, really as a part of the financial sector reform, we've been helping the banks to, basically what we need to see in Mongolia is really to sort of, expand the reach of the financial sector, particularly to the, herders or farmers, the poor segment of the society. So, introduction of the microfinance, small and medium enterprises, lending, all those things, have been our support to Mongolia.
Konishi-san, once you have seen the country, sort of the changes, and in some way we get mature, somewhere still challenges. I used to work for a commercial bank, and I find in the absence of vibrant capital market, stock exchange, the borrowers in this country have difficulty with more expensive money because it's money market, short-term money. How do you see the importance or need of capital market stocks in this country as a bank?
Now, the capital market development or development of the non-bank financial institutions, that certainly has to accelerate. We hope to see the healthy growth of the non-bank financial sector. But that's actually not only Mongolia's problem. Asia as a whole. When we look at Asia's financial sector, Asia's financial sector is very much bank dominated. And then expanding the non-bank sector, I think is a very important development process because let's say the insurance sector or those sectors become the strategic investors in or the active investors in the stock market, bond market. The development of bond market is certainly very important for the long term. To raise the long-term funds, and so clearly that the non-bank financial sector, we need to see further development.
What are the main challenges of developing capital market, non-bank financial sector in Mongolia, based on your observations and analysis?
Okay, I think regulatory issues are certainly there, and I think it really goes together with the general private sector development. To that extent, Mongolia's sort of exposure to the market economy. Still, we are talking about a relatively short period of time.
Correct.
So as we see the maturity of the market economy, I do hope that we see the gradual sort of growth of the non-bank financial sector, provided that there are going to be good regulations to promote the development of the non-bank sector.
Indeed, regulatory issues. It's a transparency issue of public sector, private sector, trust issues. Probably
all those and then that also the financial. We're talking about the financial sector, but financial sector development also goes hand in hand with the development of the private sector economy as a whole.
In fact, yes.
So, all these things, I guess, is in a way a matter of market economy's maturity.
Yes, Konishi-san. I mean, even up to now, the country in our budget, we still cover a certain deficit of the budget from ODA money. Some small percent, less and less. And yet, for the first time since 2012, we raised the fund, as you know, from capital market. First time from world capital market. Relatively, that time, cheap price. On the average, 5.5%. 1.5 billion, 2 terms maturity. Then, nowadays I got the news that our bonds with being sold with the yields of 9%, which I assume the risk assumption of the investors becoming higher than 9%. Would you agree with that positions, and why you would agree with that?
Now, if we look at the economic fundamentals, certainly the balance of payment position of this country is right now weak.
Not in the West. Okay. Weak.
But then, also, I think the investor community outside, tend to be a bit short-sighted. At least the, international organizations, including ADB, IMF, everybody is in agreement that, medium to long term, that Mongolia has a bright future. But then, there are sort of, short-term turbulences. Now, the Chinggis bond, and then the use of that money, created by the Chinggis bond, whether that money was most effectively used, and then whether that is really the money is coming back to the economy, then there are some concerns there, which brings people's concern that, hey, can the government really repay the Chinggis bond? Which is, I think, the legitimate concern if people really looking at the short term.
Yes.
But then when we think about the bigger picture, Mongolia's mineral deposits, hard-working population, like yourself, then, I do believe, Mongolia has a bright future. Now, whether the market really picks up this, the long-term view or the short-term view, that's I think is one issue.
Цаг хугацаа давтагдчихгүй. Харин түүнийг яаж зөв ашигласнаар бидний амжилт бүтээл, аз жаргал биднийг давтдаг. Урлагийн хүний хувьд гэр бүл, уран бүтээлдээ зарцуулах цагаа зөв зохицуулах хэрэгтэй гэдэг. Бидний хэрэглээ улам ухаалаг болсоор байгаа нь та бүхэнд харагдчих байна. Харин энэ бүхэн надад үнэхээр их таалагдчих.
Ухаалаг орон сууц. King Tower Apartment.
This is, exactly from your perspective, I understand what you just now said. However, for example, we have to pay first $500 million early 2018, even in January. In 2016, next year, we will have new government, which will have a new budget for year 2017, first their budget. Then our concern is, if we go like this, and if economy is not much changing, then we have to pay about maybe 10-15% of our budget only for that money. So what would be your observations on that? If Mongolia default even on the first one, what's going to happen?
First of all, I think there is a strong desire also from the side of the international community, not to let Mongolia default or anything. So, there's going to be a very strong support from the international community. That's one. In the short to medium term, we fully appreciate the current policies of the Prime Minister, Sakanbek. So, this year's, fiscal tightening, I think, was necessary. That unfortunately, sort of expansionary policies of the earlier government, taking advantage of this, the proceeds of the Chinggis bond, it really didn't work, or it really couldn't stop the overall economic downturn.
Exactly.
Unfortunately. Now, because of that, now the country's, macroeconomic situation, some of the indicators are rather difficult.
Yes.
And Prime Minister Sakambeck and his team, at least, since the beginning of this year, has been consolidating the macroeconomic management, which we strongly support. Now, this year, because we see some difficulties in government financing the social welfare program,
Yes.
we just negotiated with the government a $150 million loan to help government finance the social welfare program for this year and next year.
When to start financing?
That's going to be actually the money, 100 million will be dispersed in October this year. So $100 million will go straight to the budget in October. And then we are hoping to disburse additional $50 million probably in February, March next year.
This is a loan.
That's a loan.
What is the term?
What is the term?
Long term, it is how, I mean, it is under the same soft loan you have, or it's some sort of emergency loan?
No, it's not an emergency loan. It's what we call, that's a policy-based loan, which carries the grace period, or of 3 years, repayment over 15 years. Still that's interest is LIBOR, London Interbank rate plus 60 basis point, I believe. Yeah, right. So the 0.6. So it's still a relatively cheap money.
Oh yeah, yes, possibly yes. That's with 5% maybe, probably. What is the LIBOR now?
It's still just about around 1%. So
okay.
So we're really talking about cheap money now.
Okay, but now look at this. Now this government, or I'm not exactly mean this particular prime minister, but in general this government are running a huge deficit, and they are trying to pay our debt by another debt. Remember the last attempt in July, this 1 million CNY bond was 7.4%. I remember this 2012 was about 4%, so it's keep increasing, the more expensive. When the fiscal deficit is not in place, when they have changed even our fiscal stability law from 2% now, but even 7 or so percent, when the government is not indisciplined enough, then you are coming with even cheaper money and supporting. Don't you find that you are more kind of encouraging the government to spend more and more? Don't you think?
First of all, of course, Asian Development Bank is a financial institution, so lending money is our business. But really, if you're running any business, for the business to develop, expand, actually borrowing money is a normal way to finance the expansion of your business.
So as you can pay back.
As long as your investment will produce the necessary returns.
Yes.
Now, when we talk about Mongolia's potentials, prospects, then still the infrastructure is lacking in many aspects. The transport, you need to improve. And without improving the transport system, for example, you really cannot talk about expanding trade. So actually, for Mongolia to have larger, let's say, production capacity, well, for Mongolia to earn more revenue, there is, investment necessary. Well, let's say for Mongolia to attract more foreign direct investment.
Yeah, but this money goes to balance of payment, not current
expenses.
Yes.
This time we are providing support to the government for the social welfare support because Now, we are talking about very tight fiscal situation right now. There is anticipated, revenue shortfall. Now, if the government doesn't have enough money to pay for the social welfare programs, salaries, then who will be the one to suffer?
But they knew that we needed to cut our costs. We need to be more efficient.
Right, and the government has been cutting budget in many areas. That's what's being done. Now, as part of the policy discussions we had in providing this, the budget support for the social welfare program, there's also a discussion on how to improve the targeting of the social welfare program so that we are not really just talking about spreading money to everybody, but money goes to those who need most. So, Mr. Jagger, as you have said, the cutting expenditures where you can cut, that's important. But then maintaining the expenditure where you shouldn't be cutting, that's also very important.
That's another aspect. I understand. Beyond every cut, there is people's life.
Right.
We understand your concern.
Yeah. So, making sure that, the current tightening of the budget will not really affect the poorest segment of the society.
Okay.
Then, I think providing, or, even using the loan fund, which is at least, much longer term than the government bond or anything, I think, that will help the country. Now, medium term, we said, we also saying that, the medium term investment for the development purposes. Now, should we really give that up? Should Mongolia really give that up? Or, of course, careful, design of your investment program is important, but then even in the difficult time, maintaining certain development activities we think is also very important because, we really cannot make our future generations suffer.
Yeah, we should not.
We should not.
We should not.
So the necessary.
Unfortunately, we do in a way that the future generation is going to pay big foreign debt, which is very hard for us to pay now. You said you will help us, which is good news. But however, if they keep borrowing more and more, you have also a limit, no?
Of course, there's a limit. But then, as long as your borrowed resources, particularly for investment purposes, will bring you bigger return.
I hope so. I hope so.
And
These
we certainly
bonds should
hope
give
so.
good return.
Yeah.
And how do you find Mongolian monetary expansion policy? Nowadays, our central bank keep just printing money, giving $1 billion, 3.8 trillion, which is about on current about $2 billion printed and distributed to so-called price control projects, and then also certain money goes to this 8% mortgage rate to the customers probably who down the road most probably very hard to pay back, even 8%, even in this hard time. How do you find in general that expansionary monetary policy?
We believe, on both fiscal policy and monetary policy, the policies should move towards tightening. So, I agree with you that, the monetary easing is very dangerous for the country, and we also, worry a lot about the health of the banking sector. The health of the banking sector really need to be maintained because, we really cannot afford to see banking sector failures.
Nobody should hear.
Nobody should hear.
Very hard.
So then, for that, the responsible monetary policy is important. I think, at this stage, Mongolia should maintain or should really aim for more prudent or, I guess, less aggressive monetary stance.
In terms of diversification of the economy, not being dependent only on the mining sector where commodity prices volatility really disturbs. How do you see that, the diversification of the economy?
Actually, the ADB's current assistance strategy to Mongolia is really to help the diversification of the economy. And even traditionally we've been doing that. Kashmir industry and stuff, the development that we supported. Agriculture sector, the expansion of the value chain of the agriculture sector, that's something we'd like to see. Now, Mongolia, particularly in meat production, dairy products, we believe Mongolia has very big potentials. Now, to support that development of the agriculture products for export. Actually, we have 2 loans. We are still or 2 projects we're hoping to approve this year. One is really to support the agriculture sectors, the productivity enhancement through agribusiness development. That's one. Another interesting project we're working with the government is to improve what people call the sanitary and phytosanitary condition, SPS, management. In the simple language which people, the ordinary people understand, that's basically the issue of, the sanitation and hygiene standards of agriculture products, so safety of the food products.
I'm glad that you are mentioning this.
So we are trying to help Mongolia to improve the systems for testing and providing the quality guarantee of its agriculture products, and helping those things I think will actually support Mongolia to expand its agriculture sector, agro-processing industries, and actually many related industries, small medium business can also flourish from there. So,
my final question.
Yes, sir.
My final question would be on increasing inequality of income in this society. How do you see that? Very briefly, how do you see what's your view on that?
I think you already gave me an answer.
Okay.
The economic diversification. Particularly the development of the agriculture sector, the people living in rural areas, provide them with more bigger business opportunities. That I think is very important. And probably in Ulaanbaatar area, another thing we should really do is to improve the living conditions in gay areas.
Okay.
Provide them with better transportation, access to the sanitary and other public utilities, and provide them with good education and health.
Correct. So that's the hope, and as a citizen of Mongolia, I'm very happy to see all these years very fruitful cooperation with your bank, and thank you for coming to my show and sharing your vision. And I would like to thank you for this hard work, and ADB for this truly partnership with Mongolia.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Arigatou gozaimasu. За хүн үзэгчтэй өнөөдөр манай дефакто нэвтрүүлгээр Азийн хөгжлийн банкны Зүүн Азийн орнуудыг хариуцсан ерөнхий захирал, одоо манай бас орныг хариуцсан ерөнхий захирал ноён Аюуми Кониши оролцлоо. Их баярлалаа.